On the northern coast of the world's third biggest island, Borneo, there lies one of the world's smallest kingdoms. Brunei owes its extraordinary existence to the fact that it's had a sultan as a monarch for the last 600 years. However, unlike the rest of Asia and most of the world, Brunei remains an absolute monarchy, where the sultan is head of state, as well as head of the government. The sultan is seen as divine. Even his own cabinet ministers revere him. Brunei is known throughout the world not only for its sultan, but also for its oil. The royal family has become astronomically wealthy and has shared that wealth amongst the small population. But in Brunei, you're not supposed to discuss it.
Talking about wealth, Brunei's money is a taboo in this country. It's constitutionally banned.
The monarch has a grip over his people like nowhere else in Asia. It's a system that is hard to understand from a westernized democratic perspective.
That kind of system suits Brunei.
Whether Brunei under the Sultan is a friend of British values is, I think, a rather different question.
But is the system sustainable? What happens to the Sultan and to Brunei when the oil runs out? And can this tiny state resist democracy when so many of its neighbors have embraced it? Brunei is one of only 6 countries left in the world that have retained systems of absolute monarchy. Power is centralized and hierarchical. Political parties and elections almost non-existent. Brunei has been a sultanate ever since Muslim traders established themselves here in the 14th century. His Majesty Sultan Haji Hassan al-Bolkiah Musaidin Wadawla is Brunei's 29th sovereign. As a country, Brunei would have disappeared entirely in the 19th and 20th centuries if it hadn't been protected by Britain. They set up a residency system that ensured the country wasn't taken over by Malaysia.
The sultans those days was really hard up. There was not much money. Even the sultans wanted to go to Singapore, for example. They had to borrow money from the British.
At the beginning of the 20th century, the sultans of Brunei were said to be so poor, their clothes were threadbare and their palaces meager. The Brunei economy changed forever in 1929, after the discovery of oil by Shell Petroleum. However, the sultans weren't allowed to share the wealth that was being created at an astonishing rate.
Nothing went to the sultan at the time because according to the residency agreement, he was entitled for a monthly stipend. Say, for example, 6,000 States dollars. They were not given direct money.
The current sultan's father, Omar Ali Saifuddin III, subtly changed the relationship with the British over the course of his reign, so that Bruneians were able to share the extraordinary wealth that was being created. By the 1980s, the Sultan of Brunei had earned enough money from oil exports to be dubbed the richest man in the world, largely because the line between his personal assets and the country's had become so blurred. With unimaginable, not to say unmentionable wealth, the Sultan's position seems secure. But if 95% of Brunei's income comes from oil and gas, what happens when these resources eventually run out?
From 1935, when the oil was discovered, this British threw out the theory that within 25 years, Brunei oil will be dried up. I hear the story when I came 21 years ago. By God's will, I hope oil wealth will go on and go on forever unless someone else discover another source of energy.
Oil and gas won't last forever. So it's very important that the country's investments are developed. It benefits because it is a small country, small population. So if the investments are made properly, it should be able to live off its investments into the foreseeable future.
Human ingenuity is limitless. You know, we always worry about something which did not happen. We'll find something.
Brunei's development is at the moment unsustainable. It needs to invest in other areas and quickly. Since the 1990s, alcohol, bars and nightclubs have been banned, so it's unlikely tourism can ever gain a foothold. Because of its incredible wealth and tiny population, Bruneians have a very good standard of living, enjoy free education and healthcare, and pay no personal income tax. The average household has 3 cars, so very few people ask questions of their sultan or the future. They're enjoying their present situation too much.
It's an oasis of calm. Many people like to be in Brunei, like to work in Brunei, because it is a calm place. It's a very friendly and welcoming place. It hasn't suffered excesses of many of the other states.
Because life is so good, the Sultan and the royal family are genuinely loved by most people in Brunei.
What made the royal family of Brunei very, very popular, I think for obvious reason, is that they're being human, or they're being themselves. And if you look around, when the royal family move about in Brunei, there is minimum security that shows how safe and how well loved they are. And that is why the closeness of the people and the Sultan is really very evident.
The question is, how has the Sultan of Brunei survived as the last absolute monarch in Asia, where power is completely centralized in his hands? To understand his preeminent position, one has to examine the history of Brunei's sultans and the seminal events of 1962, when an armed rebellion almost overthrew the monarchy.